So let's start out with something that was a big topic when you were just speaking to the chamber a while ago with healthcare. That seemed to really dominate their thinking. What would you do to change the healthcare system as it is?
Well, as you heard from the small business owners, the Obamacare is not working for people that are on the individual health insurance market. We've seen here in Arizona prices going up over 100% year to year. It's those people who are starting their own business, retiring early, in between jobs, going to schools. This is 7% of how people get insurance that has just collapsed under Obamacare. Only 14 of our 15 counties in Arizona had only one choice last year. And they're often, the costs are way too high, or the networks are too small, and people were discovering that just because they have health insurance, they don't have health care. So we need a different model. We must protect people with pre-existing conditions. They cannot be denied coverage. Do not believe the lies of the attack ads on TV. I voted for, I fought for, and I advocated to make sure that insurance companies cannot deny anybody with pre-existing conditions. This touches every single family. We all know somebody, or or everyone themselves has some sort of, someone they love who either is a cancer survivor, or they just got the phone call with a diagnosis, or they've got asthma or diabetes. So we have to make sure that they're protected. But we also need more innovation, and at the state level, so that we can have a robust individual health insurance market where there's competition, where there's choices, where people can shop around and pick the insurance that works for them and their families. And someone can start a small business and not be afraid that they're not covered, like we heard the stories of in the roundtable today. So there's a better way to do this, and the Affordable Care Act is hurting especially this group of people in this individual health insurance market. Think about it. Small businesses and the people on the individual market. Over 60% of people get their health insurance from their employer. When you add in Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, VA, we're talking this group that's stuck in the middle is this 7%. And think about it, Obamacare was taxes, penalties, mandates, robbing Medicare by $700 billion, all to try and address this issue, but it's failed. Specifically this group of people. So we got to move towards something where the states have more opportunities to have innovation, where restaurant owners can work together as an association, and they can pool together and get insurance maybe together. Small business owners can pool together and have options to shop around for insurance, where you can compete across state lines, where there's options for people to, young people to shop around and get insurance that meets their needs, that they can afford when they're getting out of school. And so these are the approaches that we need to work more towards: more choice, more competition, while also guaranteeing protection for people with pre-existing conditions.
And you're still looking for ways to, as Obamacare strive to with the mandate, have a large enough pool that it covers the healthy people, help cover the sick people.
Well, exactly. So the individual mandate was the Democrats' way to do that. We believe more in freedom and choice, but we want to make sure people do get coverage and incentivize continuous coverage. So what we had was tax credits. So people can have pre-tax dollars just like businesses, and then they can shop around. What we're doing right now, the administration is doing, is creating opportunities for these association health plans. Again, a small business maybe can't compete and get insurance for their employers, but maybe the Arizona Association, for whatever business they're in, can do that with them, and they can all work together and have some strength. We also are trying to expand health savings accounts so people can save pre-tax dollars, pay for their premiums, pay for the deductibles, pay for over-the-counter medication, which Obamacare doesn't allow. These things will all allow people to be able to have more choices, and then we got to bring down the cost of health care overall. This conversation so far has been the cost of health insurance, which is unattainable for so many people. I mean, think about the people with pre-existing conditions last year who paid a penalty instead of getting health insurance. They don't have access to health insurance. So we've got to make sure that they can get the insurance they need, they can get the prescriptions that they and their families need at an affordable price, and you have a healthy insurance market that has young and old, sick and healthy, and that actually keeps the prices lower.
Now, if you cross state lines, right now the principal watchdogs over insurance to ensure fairness and all of that are at the state regulator.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
All right. When you talk about going across state lines to improve the competition, right now the principal watchdogs on the insurance industry are the state insurance commissioners.
Right.
Who would take on that role if you're crossing state lines?
So again, we prefer that a lot of this innovation gets worked at the state level, but something like the association health plans, the administration is working on options so that you can, again, as a restaurant association between states, you could work together and maybe have a bigger pool that you're competing for health insurance. This actually happens already with larger business that are multi-state businesses, that they have reciprocal agreements. So there's a way to do that. But we'd prefer not a federal one-size-fits-all, robbing Medicare of $700 billion, $1 trillion in taxes, all for basically a failing system that's unattainable for people to afford their health insurance right now. Let's take a fresh look. Let's provide choices for people. Let's allow the states to innovate. Let's use the taxpayer resources that are being invested in a way that invests in those that have the most complex healthcare issues, provide wraparound services to them, allow the states to use the stability fund that we created in our legislation for them to bring premiums down, bring costs down, and have more choices for people. That's a better model.
Now, what if anything, would you like to do to change Social Security and Medicare?
Well, first of all, I'm not trying to change Social Security and Medicare, so don't believe those attack ads. Those who have worked their whole lives and they are at and near retirement, they have been planning on Social Security and Medicare, and we need to make sure that we keep those promises. Now, in 2026, Medicare is not going to be solvent, and in 2034, Social Security won't be. So we have to work in a bipartisan way in order to strengthen those programs for the following generations. So those lies on TV are absolutely not true. Those are just fear tactics, related to people who don't have anything else to run on. But I really do believe if you look at what's happening with our economy right now, we have more people working because we cut taxes, we roll back regulations, there's more people paying payroll taxes. That right there is actually making these two programs more solvent because we have more people paying into it. But we've got to strengthen and sustain these programs for future generations. Medicare Advantage is another one that's very popular in Arizona. We have a lot of seniors who like to look for different Medicare Advantage programs, and they really do a lot of good work. So the last administration was trying to cut Medicare Advantage, and I helped lead the fight to make sure that stopped from happening. So we need to preserve that as well.
Now, what's your impression of the overall state of the Arizona economy, and how can you make it stronger? And that probably also rolls into the trade and tariff issues.
The Arizona economy is going strong. I mean, look, even nationwide, we're at the lowest unemployment that we've seen since 1969, lowest Hispanic employment, female employment, veterans employment, all the way around, because we've cut your taxes. My opponent did not vote to cut your taxes. I voted to cut your taxes. We're rolling back regulations. We're providing small businesses the opportunity to grow and hire more people, and we're seeing that right here in Arizona. There's also initiatives at the state level that the governor has had to bring businesses here and take advantage of a great environment that's welcoming to companies that want to bring their workers and their families here, and that's fantastic. On our part at the federal level, I'm also focusing on preserving our national security treasures like Davis-Monthan and Fort Huachuca. They have a really important economic impact, and I've been leading the charge to keep the A-10 flying, the EC-130s, and all the important missions here at Davis-Monthan and Fort Huachuca. Also, infrastructure is another important element. The highway bill, we got some big wins in that. The Sonoran Corridor is another one that can be game-changing. That's got some federal influence there. I got that in the highway bill. And then Mexico's our top trading partner. So the modernization of NAFTA is a win-win-win for America, Mexico, and Canada. But especially for Arizona businesses. We can increase our cross-border commerce with Mexico with this modernized NAFTA. So that's a really good breakthrough that we've had.
So you feel like that new agreement is going to improve the cross-border?
Yes, I do. It's modernized it so that there's more opportunities for us to have cross-border commerce. But also we got to make sure we have the infrastructure and the manning at the border. And so I've been fighting to make sure we're modernizing our ports of entry, like at the Douglas Port of Entry, because of my advocacy. That's on the 5-year plan. We've got a feasibility study going on right now. That had been neglected for a very long time, and I tirelessly advocated we got to make sure we update that thing. And the manning at the ports of entry. We can have the lanes open, but if there's not enough manning there, then that slows down the commerce. So my first bill signed into law was fast-tracking our veterans for the ports of entry jobs. So it's critical.
What's the best approach to border protection? And I guess immigration rolls into that too, especially when you've got these families who are making asylum requests.
We have to secure the border. I'm one of only 9 members of Congress right now that represents the southern border, and as the freshman, I was appointed the chair of the Border Security Subcommittee, never given to a freshman before, never given to anyone from Arizona. So I've been in that leadership position, fighting to secure the border, working with this administration. I represent fifth-generation ranchers that are down on the border, that are dealing with, 4 strands of barbed wire is all that demarks the international boundary. They've got cartels trafficking drugs through their ranches. They've got human trafficking happening as well. And then we have individuals, because of the loopholes in our laws, that are realizing that they're going to be let go if they just say a few words or if they show up with a kid. And so we have to close these loopholes. We have to secure the border. That's going to take investing in infrastructure. It's going to means investing in the border wall, investing in access roads and technology, the fixed towers, the mobile towers, the sensors, the manned and unmanned aircraft. Border Patrol agents. I mean, my bill added 5,000 Border Patrol agents, $38 billion invested in border security for all the things I just mentioned. And the access roads are a really big deal. For some of the ranchers, sometimes it takes an hour and a half to get down there. So it's tough for Border Patrol to be able to patrol down there. And we need intelligence-driven operations so that they can go after the cartels and their money and their leadership, but also, then detect and interdict the illegal activity where it happens. This is really crucial for Arizona, and my bill actually closed these loopholes and provide the resources to secure the border. Unfortunately, my opponent didn't vote for it.
Is a wall part of this? Is a wall the answer, part of the answer?
Yeah, absolutely, a wall is part of it. Look, the Secure Fence Act was passed in 2005, amended in 2006, mandating 700 miles of a double-layer wall on the border. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden all voted for it. They knew that a barrier was an important part of border security back then. This has gotten so ridiculous in the way people even think about it. But if you talk to the ranchers down at the border, where they had no barrier before, and now they have the 18-foot steel ballard fencing, where they maybe used to have nothing, it's more of the, they have fencing in other areas, but it creates what they call impedance and denial, where the cartels have a problem they have to solve. Now, given time, without monitoring it, they'll figure it out. They'll go over it, through it, or under it. But at least it creates that barrier that they have to try and figure out how to get around. And then if you put the agents and the sensors down there, while they're having to try and figure that out, then it gives us time to be able to interdict that activity. So Jim Chilton's ranch is a perfect example. It's west of Nogales, and that's the one I'm talking about. It's got miles of border that all there is a 4 lines of chicken wire across. And the cartels, he's got cameras set up, and he sees these drug mules that are just continuously trafficking through his ranch. He wants a barrier down there. He wants a border wall. In areas of the Rio Grande Valley where there's river, obviously you need more riverine boats. You need more Border Patrol agents monitoring and more sensors. In some places you need a levee system that helps with flood control and creates a barrier. So sector by sector, from the bottom up, that you need the sector chiefs to be able to tell, what do they need to secure that part of the sector. So they have situational awareness and operational control of the border. And in many places, it does include a border wall.
Now, when people show up with kids, is there a better way to vet them out and figure out which ones are there as a pretense and which ones really are sincerely seeking asylum as a family?
So there's a couple things. The cartels know that because of a loophole in what's called the Flores Agreement, it's a settlement that basically says we can't detain children more than 20 days. They know that anyone who shows up and crosses the border illegally with a kid, we can't detain them. And we're seeing this right now. I've been on the phone all weekend with the mayor of Yuma, totally concerned that they're going to have hundreds of people just released into their community. Now, the good news is they didn't get released into the Yuma community, but they are being released everywhere else now, because the cartels know that, hey, we just make sure we're going to have people pay us, show up with a kid, cross illegally, and they're going to be released. They'll be given a court date in the future. They don't have enough ankle monitors, and many of them just don't show up. Others are showing up through the ports of entry, and they've been trained by the cartels. All you have to say is, I have a credible fear, and they start them through the asylum process. Look, we have an important and compassionate asylum system in order to protect people that are fearing for their lives and oppression by their own governments, but it's being taken advantage of right now. And the people who have a legitimate asylum claims are being lost in the sea of those who are now taking advantage of the system. So every single day, we're just having people show up, say the right words, show up with a kid, disappear into the interior of the United States, never to show up for their court date. That doesn't make any sense. That's not compassionate for the people who are filing asylum, who are taking years now to have their case made. So my bill closes those loopholes, allows a swifter process of adjudication for asylum claims, and allows us to enforce the law while keeping families together. And that's the way we need to move forward.
We're fresh off what we could, I guess, most neutrally call an intense Supreme Court confirmation. Mm-hmm. You've talked a lot in the past about bipartisan work. How do you get back to any sort of spirit of compromise in the Senate, which frequently has talked about how it's a great forum for people to come to agreements, come to conclusions. How do you come away from something like that?
Well, I think most people are disgusted after watching what happened over the last few weeks. Look, as someone who shared recently publicly, that I myself am a survivor of sexual abuse and sexual assault, we need to take those allegations very seriously. But what happened in this process, where I really truly believe, Dr. Ford was also taken advantage of, but the Democrats had a goal of taking down the Supreme Court nominee no matter what, at whatever cost. And they, Dr. Ford wanted to be anonymous. And the process they went through to delay and then to push her name out there, whoever did it, and then the spectacle of personal destruction that they went through, and then the mobs and the threatening and the intimidation in order to stop this appointment from happening, I think is really woken a lot of people up. I mean, we're seeing it every day. People are calling our office saying, how can we help? Because they're just disgusted that you can have disagreements on things, but when you start to turn it into scorched earth and personal destruction to get your way in order to get power, regardless of what the carnage is along the way, I think the vast majority of people would say that's just wrong. And so that's why I think we're seeing a real shift happen around the country, even within this election and within Arizona, where there is an enthusiasm of independents and Republicans who are realizing, like, wow, that's just not the way it needs to be. And also moderate Democrats who are saying, like, that's not my party. Like, my party just left me. So when I get there, I mean, look, I've always worked bipartisan. Every single one of my 20 bills that has passed through the House have been bipartisan. All of the big wins that we've had, whether it's on the A-10, working on Cherry Bell Postal Processing Facility, working on the Douglas Port of Entry, getting the World War II women buried at Arlington again, they've all been bipartisan. So I'm certainly going to bring that same approach when I get to the Senate. I just hope that people can look themselves in the mirror and say, like, that was just wrong, and they need to hit the reset button and start fresh, because the institution and the country is asking more of them than what we saw in the last few weeks.
How do you get people out of the trenches and back to the idea of, well, I can disagree with you without demonizing you?
Well, I can only speak for myself. That's the approach that I certainly take. I think we should have robust discussions and debates about the issues of the day. We have sincerely held beliefs and differences on opinion, but can we find some common ground and work through to solve the problems for the country? I mean, that's the approach that I took in the House, for example, when the efforts to move away from the Affordable Care Act collapsed. I sat down with a bunch of Democrats in my office in a group I'm a part of called the Problem Solvers Caucus, said, okay, I know we know exactly what we disagree on. Can we figure out anything that we agree upon to stabilize the individual health insurance market so that we can provide some stability over the next few years? And we found some common ground, and we came up with a proposal that, we each had to give some and take some, but we were trying to fix the problem. So that's the approach that I'll take when I get back, when I get over to the Senate, and I just hope everybody would take a similar approach.
But when you come out with levels of compromise and you go back to your party, do people go like, what are you doing consorting with Democrats?
Well, what we found was we tried to... Sorry, Pace is sneezing there.
That wasn't an editorial.
Yeah, can you edit that out?
So just the idea of when you go back to your main party, they go like,
yeah.
Wait a minute, what are you doing dealing with these people?
Well, we're trying to solve a problem, right? We're trying to fix a problem, and instead of sitting in your corners and yelling at each other, can we at least find where the Venn diagram overlaps a little on some of these issues? That's the approach that I've always taken on every issue that I'm trying to address. Even on this issue related to border security and family separation and DACA, I mean, I jumped into a leadership role to see, can we find some agreement on, we should agree that we should secure the border, right? That we should close these loopholes that the cartels are taking advantage of. We should end family separation and then do something on DACA. Can we kind of put this together in a way that most people could agree upon? Unfortunately, it got so partisan that we couldn't get one Democrat to agree on. Think about that. I mean, my opponent didn't vote for securing the border with $38 billion, and a second bill had $25 billion. A very compassionate approach towards addressing the family separation while enforcing the, the rule of law, and doing something for the DACA population while ensuring that we're addressing the root causes of why we have a DACA population. So we're not sitting here again another 5 or 10 years with the same problem, and we're not incentivizing illegal activity. So I jumped in and led on this issue, but we couldn't get one Democrat to include my opponent to vote for it.
Now, what do you want to do in terms of the DACA people?
So our proposal allowed them to have a legal status and compete for existing paths to a green card that are already out there in the first version of the bill that we voted on. The second version allowed them to compete for a merit-based green card with others in similar circumstances. There are people here, specifically from India, from the country of India, who have come on high-tech visas, who have been waiting in many cases for years and dozens of years for them to get access to a green card because of the way the system is. Some of them have kids that they brought when they were children who know no other country than America, who grew up and this is the country that they know, and they are in the very same circumstance as a DACA kid, but they're actually here legally. And so it's not fair that we're addressing just the DACA population without addressing those that are here legally that are in similar circumstances. So our bill allowed, the second bill allowed each of them to compete for a merit-based path to a green card. They had to go through a background check and meet certain employment and education requirements or serve in the military in order to compete for that. That was, again, a reasonable approach. But what we can't do is just solve that issue while we keep the border unsecure, the visa overstay enforcement not happening, and these loopholes still happening. Because every single day today, in Yuma and other places around the country, we have people that are continuing to take advantage of coming here illegally, and then we're going to have another DACA generation here in another 5-10 years. So we have to address the root causes while showing pragmatic compassion towards the DACA population, but not just solving that by itself.
We got to wrap it.
Okay, the carte blanche question. Anything you want to add on any of this?
Well, I mean, we didn't talk much about the campaign, so I have the opportunity to.
Actually, I did want to get to that, but we talk about.
So yeah, let me. I got a couple things.
You've talked about campaign lies.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the other side. Your opponents keep going like, "Oh, this is a negative campaign. We're getting sniped at with negative ads." What do you say to all that?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I hope that Southern Arizonans realize we've only had 11 senators in our history as a state, and only one from Southern Arizona. Should I be elected, which I plan to be in 27 days, I will be the second senator ever from Southern Arizona. This is pretty important. I mean, to have someone in the Senate representing the whole state, but whose home is here, who understands the unique challenges and opportunities of Southern Arizona, who knows firsthand what Davis-Monthan and Fort Huachuca bring to our economy and our national security, who's going to fight for local issues like the Cherry Belle Postal Processing Facility and the Douglas Port of Entry. That is significant, and I hope that the voters in Southern Arizona take a look at the importance of that. They may not agree with me on some things, but having your advocate at the table as they are representing the whole state is pretty meaningful and a historic opportunity for us. Look, as far as the campaign goes, they know that the balance of the Senate goes through Arizona. There has been millions of dollars poured into my opponent to try and reinvent her as if she is right of center, because that's generally what Arizona is right of center. But it is important for people to know the options that they have in front of them and what each of us have done with our lives, where we've put our passion, what we've led on. I mean, my history is pretty clear. I served 26 years in the military. I put my life on the line for our freedoms. 6 deployments to the Middle East, 325 combat hours, training here, and 4 assignments at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. While my opponent was a Green Party activist protesting our troops, depicting our military as skeletons, as if we were the terrorists, advocating to shut down Luke Air Force Base. Those are all factual things. Those are not made-up attacks. It's important for the voters to see what people have given their time and their energy to. And she's a career politician. I'm a career fighter pilot. So there is a difference there. They're not attack ads. They're public service announcements when we're actually trying to get those facts out there. They have certainly gone to a tactic that we saw similar to what they did in the last few weeks in Washington, D.C., is the attacks of personal destruction. They're attacking me now personally, saying I'm morally bankrupt, like I don't have integrity. I mean, I raised my right hand and took an oath of office in the military with duty, honor, country as our forefront of the things that we care about, serving with integrity and excellence. I'm trying to continue to serve my country in this new way. We may disagree on policies, but if you have no way to respond to the past that you have, if all you can do is attack me personally and attack my integrity and my honor, We care about veterans in Arizona, and I really think that's going to backfire.